My name is Gavin Ellsworth. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a strategic branding consultant in Seattle, Washington. For the last 4 years, I'd been building what I thought was a solid life with Rowena Clark, a 29-year-old interior designer with impeccable taste and a smile that could disarm anyone. We were exactly 2 weeks away from getting married in Big Sky, Montana. 60 guests, intimate ceremony, everything planned down to the smallest detail. I've always approached life like a project. Analysis, planning, execution. It's what made me successful in my career, and I thought it would make me successful in marriage too. Rowena seemed like the perfect partner, creative where I was analytical, warm where I was reserved. We balanced each other, or so I believed. Then I found the messages. It was a Tuesday night on September 7th, 2024. Rowena had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she took a shower. A notification popped up. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally, but the name caught my eye. Travis Delmar, her ex-boyfriend. 31 years old, a freelance photographer who always seemed to be going through something difficult, according to Rowena. I clicked. What I saw made my blood run cold, but my face stayed perfectly calm. That's the thing about being methodical. You don't react, you assess. The messages went back months. Flirty texts, photos I won't describe here. Mentions of secret meetups at a coffee shop in Ballard. And then, the line that sealed everything. I think I'm still confused about what I feel for you. This was sent 3 days after we'd finalized our wedding invitations on August 31st. I didn't confront her. I didn't slam the laptop shut or storm into the bathroom. Instead, I took screenshots. Every single conversation. I organized them by date, saved them in a hidden folder, and closed the laptop exactly as I'd found it. When Rowena came out, towel wrapped around her hair, she asked what I wanted for dinner. "Whatever you're in the mood for," I said. She smiled and kissed my cheek. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched her closely. The signs had always been there. I just hadn't been paying attention. The way she'd angle her phone away when texting. How she'd suddenly become vague about her schedule. The coldness in bed that I'd chalked up to wedding stress. She insisted Travis be invited to the ceremony. "He's an old friend," she said. It would mean a lot to me. I agreed without hesitation. Meanwhile, I was making moves she couldn't see. I reviewed our prenuptial agreement with my attorney, making sure every clause was ironclad. I contacted the venue in Big Sky and made some very specific arrangements regarding the AV system in the reception hall, and I redirected the $18,000 we'd set aside for our honeymoon in Bali towards something else entirely. I reached out to a non-profit that supported young local artists in Montana. I commissioned several pieces to be displayed at our reception venue, discreetly placed around the hall. The artists thought they were getting exposure at a wedding. I knew they were getting something far more valuable, funding for their futures, paid for by what should have been my honeymoon. Rowena noticed nothing. She was too busy planning her perfect day while texting her ex-boyfriend behind my back. The morning of the wedding arrived on September 21st, 2024. Big Sky, Montana, in late September is breathtaking. Mountains, clear skies, golden light cutting through the pine trees. Our venue was a restored barn with rustic charm and modern amenities. Everything looked exactly as Rowena had envisioned. I got dressed slowly, deliberately. Navy suit, crisp white shirt, cufflinks my father had given me. In the mirror, I looked like a man about to get married. Inside, I was someone else entirely. Then came the knock on my door. Rowena stepped in, still in her robe, her hair partially styled. Her eyes were red, makeup not yet applied. She looked nervous, fragile even. "Gavin," she said, her voice shaking. "I think I need some time. I don't know if I'm ready for this." For a moment, the room was silent. She was trying to call it off. Right there, minutes before the ceremony, she probably thought she was in control of the narrative, that she'd be the one to end things on her terms, Maybe run back to Travis, keep me as a backup plan. I looked at her calmly and said just 2 words. Time granted. Then I walked past her, adjusted my tie, and headed toward the altar. The barn was filled with our 60 guests. Family members I'd known my whole life. Friends from college, colleagues from Seattle. Rowena's parents sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Her mother had been crying happy tears since the night before. Travis Delmar sat 3 rows back, wearing a dark gray suit that probably cost him a month's rent. He looked uncomfortable, which made sense. The other man always does. I walked to the front of the ceremony space and stood where the officiant would normally be. Our wedding coordinator, a woman named Patricia who'd been managing events in Montana for 20 years, gave me a confused look. I nodded at her. She stepped aside. The music that was supposed to cue Rowena's entrance kept playing softly in the background. Guests started murmuring, checking their watches, craning their necks toward the entrance. But Rowena didn't appear. She was probably still in that room, trying to process what I'd said, trying to figure out her next move. I raised my hand and the music stopped. "Thank you all for being here," I said. My voice was steady, clear. I want to start with a moment of complete transparency. I could see confusion rippling through the crowd. My mother leaned forward, concerned. Rowena's father frowned. I nodded to the AV technician I'd hired separately, a guy named Derek who thought he was just running a standard wedding slideshow. He pressed play on the laptop connected to the massive screen that hung above the reception area. The screen came to life. First, a date stamp, June 14th, 2024. Then a text message conversation. Rowena's name at the top, Travis's responses below. "Miss your hands on me. When can we meet again? Same place, Thursday afternoon?" The messages scrolled slowly, deliberately, each one time-stamped, each one saved exactly as it had been sent. Photos appeared. Nothing explicit enough to be obscene, but intimate enough to be damning. Rowena in Travis's studio, her hand on his shoulder. Travis's car parked outside her office at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday. And then, the line I'd circled in red. "I think I'm still confused about what I feel for you, but I can't stop thinking about you." The date on that message was September 3rd, 2024. 10 days after we'd sent out our wedding invitations. The barn went completely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper. Just the soft hum of the projector and the sound of 60 people realizing they were witnessing something they'd never forget. The slideshow continued. More messages, more photos. A video Travis had sent her. Just him talking into his camera, saying he missed her. All of it set to the music Rowena had chosen for her bridal entrance. A slow, romantic piano piece that now sounded like a funeral march. I didn't look at the screen. I'd seen it all before. Instead, I watched the faces in the crowd. Rowena's mother covered her mouth with both hands. Her father's jaw tightened, his face turning red. My own parents sat frozen, my mother gripping my father's arm. Friends looked at each other, unsure whether to stand, to leave, to say something. Travis tried to sink into his chair. Then when he realized people were starting to notice him, he stood and slipped toward the side exit. Nobody stopped him. Nobody said a word. The slideshow ended with one final message sent on September 19th. "See you at the wedding. Can't wait to see you in that dress." The screen went black. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I spoke again. "I discovered these messages 2 weeks ago," I said. "I didn't cancel the wedding because I wanted everyone here to understand something important. Transparency matters. Trust matters. And when someone violates that trust while planning the most significant commitment of their life, they don't deserve to control the narrative." Rowena appeared at the entrance to the barn. She'd heard everything, seen everything. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock and horror. She looked like she wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. I walked toward her, my footsteps echoing in the silent barn. When I reached her, I pulled an envelope from my inside jacket pocket. The prenuptial agreement we'd both signed, now torn into neat, precise pieces. "You wanted time," I said quietly, so only she could hear. "You've got all the time in the world now." I handed her the envelope. She took it with shaking hands. Then I turned back to the guests. "The ceremony is canceled," I announced, "but the reception will go on. This venue, this food, this evening, it's all been paid for, and I'm not going to let it go to waste." I gestured to the artwork that had been placed throughout the barn. Paintings, sculptures, photographs created by young Montana artists, pieces that had been there all along, but that nobody had really noticed until now. "This event is now a fundraiser for local emerging artists," I continued. "Every piece you see here tonight is for sale, with 100% of proceeds going directly to the creators. These young people are talented, hardworking, and deserve support. The dinner will be served as planned. The bar is open. Please stay, enjoy yourselves, and if you're moved to do so, support these artists." I paused, scanning the faces in front of me. "Art has a way of revealing truth," I said, "and truth has a way of setting people free." With that, I walked past Rowena, who still stood frozen at the entrance, and headed toward the bar. I needed a drink, a real one. Behind me, I heard the first whispers start, then voices. Then the sound of chairs scraping as people stood, unsure what to do next. Some left immediately, shaking their heads. Others approached the artwork, curious despite everything. A few came up to me, awkwardly offering condolences or support. My father clasped my shoulder. "Son," he said, "that was all, just that one word." But I understood. Rowena disappeared. I learned later that she'd locked herself in the bridal suite for an hour before her mother coaxed her out and drove her back to their hotel. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't offer explanations or apologies, just left. The reception transformed into something strange and unexpected. What should have been a celebration of a marriage became a celebration of something else entirely. Independence, truth, the courage to walk away from something that was already broken. By the end of the night, every single piece of art had been sold. The band I'd hired started playing soft jazz, and people clinked glasses, unsure what to toast to but feeling like they'd witnessed something they'd never forget. Some guests left quietly. Others stayed until midnight examining the artwork, talking in hushed tones about what they'd just seen. The week after the wedding that wasn't, I stayed in Montana. I'd already taken 2 weeks off work for what was supposed to be my honeymoon in Bali, so I figured I might as well use the time. I rented a small cabin outside of Big Sky, spent my days hiking, and my evenings sitting on the porch with a bourbon, watching the sunset behind the mountains. I didn't post anything on social media, didn't make any statements, didn't answer the dozens of calls and texts flooding my phone. I just existed in the quiet, letting everything settle. Rowena tried to reach me. 17 calls in the first 3 days, then text messages, long ones explaining, justifying, apologizing. She claimed Travis had manipulated her, that she'd been confused, that she loved me and had made a terrible mistake, that if I'd just talked to her, we could work through this. I didn't respond, not once. On day 4, she sent a message that was different from the others. "You humiliated me in front of everyone I love. You're cruel." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I deleted it without responding. She'd humiliated herself. I'd just provided the screen. Back in Seattle, the story had already taken on a life of its own. In our social circle, people talked. Rowena tried to control the damage, reaching out to mutual friends with her version of events. She painted herself as the victim of a vindictive ex-fiancé who couldn't handle her honesty. She claimed I'd invaded her privacy, that the messages were taken out of context, that I'd orchestrated a public humiliation for revenge. But here's the thing about evidence. It speaks louder than explanations. Several friends who'd been at the wedding quietly shared what they'd seen. Not in a gossipy way, but in a "this is what actually happened" way. The slideshow had been clear. The dates had been undeniable. And Rowena's inability to face anyone afterward spoke volumes. Within 2 weeks, her narrative collapsed. People stopped returning her calls. Mutual friends took sides, and most of them didn't take hers. Her business partner, a woman named Claire who ran their interior design firm, distanced herself professionally. Claire had built a reputation on trust and integrity, and she couldn't afford to be associated with someone whose personal life had become a public scandal. Travis didn't fare much better. Someone at the wedding had recognized him from the slideshow and posted about it on Instagram, tagging his photography business. Within hours, the post had been shared across Reddit and Twitter. Clients started canceling bookings. Corporate gigs dried up. His reputation in Seattle's freelance photography scene, which relied heavily on word of mouth and personal referrals, took a serious hit. He tried to disappear from social media for a while, but the damage was done. His name had become synonymous with the guy who ruined someone's wedding. Some people called what I did excessive. A few thought I should have just called off the wedding privately, handled it like an adult, spared everyone the spectacle. But here's what those people don't understand. Rowena had already made it a spectacle. She'd invited her affair to our wedding. She'd planned to walk down that aisle and make vows she had no intention of keeping. I just made sure everyone knew what was really happening. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened to me. The fundraiser angle, the way I'd handled the situation without losing my composure, without yelling or making a scene, it resonated with people. Not just friends, but professionally. A partner at a venture capital firm I'd worked with before reached out. "Gavin," he said over coffee at a place in Pioneer Square, "what you did took guts. Not the exposure part, the grace part. Turning that disaster into something productive. That's leadership." Within a month, I had 3 new consulting contracts. Major clients, companies looking to rebrand after internal crises. The combined value was around $200,000. They wanted someone who could stay calm under pressure, who could see the bigger picture when everything was falling apart. Someone who could turn a disaster into an opportunity. The irony wasn't lost on me. One of those clients was a tech startup that had gone through a very public founder dispute. They needed to rebuild their image, regain investor confidence, and move forward without letting the past define them. I worked with their team for 6 months, and by the end of it, they'd secured Series B funding and had completely transformed their public narrative. The CEO sent me a bottle of 25-year-old Macallan with a note. "You helped us find our way through the mess. Thank you." I still have that bottle. Haven't opened it yet. Back to Rowena. About 2 months after the wedding, in November 2024, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she'd moved to Portland. She'd quietly broken her lease on our shared condo, packed what she could fit in her car, and left Seattle in the middle of the night. Smaller market, fresh start, hoping to rebuild her design career away from Seattle's tight-knit professional circles. She'd ended things with Travis completely. Apparently, once the fantasy became reality, neither of them actually wanted it. She sent me one final message in December 2024. "I hope you're happy now. You destroyed my life." I didn't respond to that one either, but I thought about it. I hadn't destroyed her life, I'd revealed the truth. What she did with that truth, how she responded to the consequences of her own choices, that was on her. I'd simply decided that I wasn't going to be the silent partner in my own betrayal. I wasn't going to smile through a ceremony while knowing what was happening behind the scenes. The artists whose work I'd funded reached out individually over the following months. One of them, a painter named Sophia, sent me a handwritten note. "I don't know what happened at that event, but the money you raised changed my life. I was able to quit my restaurant job and paint full-time. Thank you." That note meant more to me than any of the professional success that followed. By spring 2025, I'd fully settled into my new normal. I sold the condo Rowena and I had shared, too many memories, and bought a modern loft in Capitol Hill, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Space Needle. I started running again, something I'd let slip during the relationship. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected, and I started dating again, carefully, slowly, with a much clearer understanding of what I was looking for and what I wasn't willing to tolerate. One evening in April 2025, I was having dinner at a sushi place in Fremont with a woman named Andrea, a patent attorney I'd met through work. We'd crossed paths during a rebranding project for one of her tech clients, and she'd reached out a few weeks later to grab coffee. Smart, funny, direct. We were talking about past relationships, the way people do when they're getting to know each other. "So what happened with your ex?" she asked. "If you don't mind me asking," I smiled. "That's a long story." "I've got time," she said. I considered for a moment, then said, "She made choices. I made sure those choices had consequences. And then I moved on." Andrea nodded slowly. "Good answer. We're still dating, taking it slow. But there's something different this time. A foundation of honesty that I didn't realize was missing before." A year later, in September 2025, I found myself back in Montana. Not for a wedding this time, but for a gallery opening. Sophia, the painter whose work I'd helped fund, was having her first solo exhibition in Bozeman. She'd invited me personally, and I felt compelled to go. The gallery was packed. Sophia's work had evolved, bold, expressive pieces that explored themes of transformation and resilience. I stood in front of one painting titled "After the Fall," and I felt something shift inside me. It was a phoenix, but not the cliché kind. This one was still on fire, still burning, but already taking flight. "That one's my favorite," Sophia said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of wine. She handed me one. "It's about the moment you realize the worst thing that happened to you might actually be the best thing." I took a sip of wine and nodded. "I understand that feeling." She smiled. "I know you do." That night, at your wedding that wasn't a wedding, I remember thinking, this man just turned his pain into something beautiful. You gave me and the other artists a chance we wouldn't have had otherwise. But more than that, you showed us that you can face the worst moment of your life and still choose grace. Grace? I laughed a little. Some people would call it revenge. Maybe, she said. But revenge would have been screaming, breaking things, making it ugly. What you did was different. You told the truth and created something good from something terrible. That's not revenge. That's alchemy. I'd never thought about it that way. Over the course of that year, I'd had a lot of time to reflect on what happened. There were moments when I questioned my choices. Should I have handled it differently? Was the public exposure necessary, or was it just my ego needing vindication? These questions kept me up some nights. But every time I circled back to those doubts, I'd remember how Rowena had looked me in the eye for months while planning our wedding, all while maintaining an emotional affair. I'd remember how she'd insisted Travis be invited, how she'd almost made it to the altar before trying to back out on her terms. The truth is, I don't regret what I did. Not the exposure, not the slideshow, not redirecting the event toward something meaningful. What I regret is not seeing the signs earlier, not trusting my instincts when something felt off, not asking the hard questions when they needed to be asked. But those are different regrets. Those are about me, not about her. My career continued to flourish. That initial wave of consulting work led to more opportunities. I was invited to speak at the Brand Leadership Summit in Chicago in July 2025 about crisis management and brand recovery. Standing on that stage, sharing strategies for navigating public challenges with integrity, I realized that my personal disaster had become my professional advantage. I didn't talk about Rowena specifically during the presentation. I didn't need to. The principles were universal. Transparency builds trust, evidence speaks louder than emotion, and how you handle your worst moment defines your character more than how you handle your best. After the conference, a woman approached me. She was probably in her 50s, well-dressed with kind eyes. "Mr. Ellsworth," she said, "I was at a wedding in Montana last year. I'm a friend of your mother's." My stomach tightened. I remembered her face now. She'd been there. "I just wanted to tell you," she continued, "that what you did took courage. My daughter went through something similar. Found out her fiancé was cheating 2 days before their wedding. She canceled everything, hid from everyone for months, and felt ashamed. When she heard about what happened to you, how you handled it, it changed something for her. She realized she didn't have to be ashamed. He was the one who betrayed trust, not her. You gave her permission to stop apologizing for someone else's mistake." She squeezed my hand. "Thank you for that." I didn't know what to say. I managed a thank you in return, but the conversation stayed with me for weeks. As for Rowena, I heard occasional updates through the grapevine. She'd found moderate success in Portland, working with smaller clients, keeping a lower profile. She'd gotten engaged again, to someone completely different from both Travis and me. I hoped genuinely that she'd learned something, that she'd grown, that whoever this new person was, she was honest with him. I didn't wish her harm. I just wished her gone from my life, and that wish had been granted. Travis fell off my radar entirely. Last I heard, he'd moved to Los Angeles trying to break into commercial photography. Maybe he made it. Maybe he didn't. Either way, it stopped being my concern. What I learned from the whole experience goes beyond the specifics of infidelity or betrayal. I learned that silence isn't always strength. Sometimes strength is speaking up, showing the receipts, refusing to let someone else write your story. I learned that grace and accountability aren't opposites. They can exist together. You can hold someone accountable for their actions while still maintaining your own dignity. And I learned that the worst day of your life doesn't have to define you. It can redirect you. I'm not the same person I was in that barn in Montana. I'm more careful now, more aware. I trust my instincts in a way I didn't before. I don't ignore red flags or convince myself that everything's fine when it clearly isn't. But I'm also more open, because not everyone is Rowena. Not every relationship ends in betrayal. Some people actually mean their vows. Some people actually honor their commitments. Andrea and I are still together. We moved in together in August 2025. It's different from what I had with Rowena. Simpler somehow. More honest. We don't play games, we don't hide things. When something bothers us, we talk about it immediately. Now, in October 2025, I'm sitting in our loft, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Last week, Andrea found an old photo of me and Rowena that I'd missed when I was purging my stuff. She held it up and asked, "You want to keep this?" I looked at it. Rowena and me at a Christmas party, both smiling, both looking happy. It felt like looking at strangers. "No," I said, "you can toss it." She did, without ceremony or comment. Then she kissed me and went back to making dinner. That's what moving on actually looks like. Not dramatic, not vengeful, just forward. If I could go back and change what happened, would I? Honestly, I don't know. The pain was real, the humiliation, the betrayal, the months of questioning everything. That was all real. But so was everything that came after. The growth, the opportunities, the clarity about what I actually want from life. Maybe Sophia was right. Maybe it really was alchemy, turning something poisonous into something pure. I'm not grateful for what Rowena did, but I'm grateful for who I became in response to it. And that's enough. Sometimes what looks like revenge is just the first step toward freedom. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get updates on new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.